Today we continue our deep dive into the Norse universe with a look at the original frenemy, Loki.
Enter a world of enchantment, of enlightenment, Meg's magical mansion.
Come, whoever you are, to Meg's magical mansion.
A virtual guest house for spiritual wayfarers.
A place where the ordinary becomes magical.
Where wisdom is yours for the asking.
And where your higher nature is just a wish away. Thanks for joining us here today at the Magical Mansion. I'm Meg with my fluffy puppy, Miss Alice Poopers. And of course, we're joined by the scrumptious Miss Parfait.
Charmed.
And today we're continuing our deep dive into the Norse universe.
You know, I'm really excited about today's episode because we're talking about and we're taking a look at one of the most interesting and complicated characters in Norse mythology, in the Norse pantheon, which I feel is Loki.
Absolutely. Loki is known as a cunning trickster and a shapeshifter. And, you know, this character, who, by the way, Parfait, isn't even really a god, but Loki plays a huge role in the Norse universe.
You know, there are so many crazy stories and so many stories about his antics, the tricks he would play on the gods. You know, he was truly a frenemy of his day. And he was just one of those people you love to kind of hate.
And that's absolutely true. And today, we're going to look into the really true story of Loki. Not what the Marvel comic books or Marvel Universe is putting out.
Yeah, so buckle up and get ready, kids, because this is going to be a crazy ride, and chaos is sure to ensue because Loki's main goal, of course, was chaos.
And regardless of the outcome. And let me tell you what, Loki was a master at mayhem.
Absolutely, so get ready because it's a wild story. Enjoy.
Today, we're going to take a close look at one of the most infamous characters in all of the Norse pantheon, Loki. We're going to examine him a little bit differently. We're going to look at him through the lens of parent and husband. Loki had 3 wives and a number of extremely interesting offspring. And Loki and his children were some of the important players in Ragnarok, the fabled ending of the Norse universe. Loki was the trickster god in the Norse pantheon, and it's important to remember that Loki was not actually a god. Loki was a giant. And of course, you know, keep in mind that Odin's own mother was the giantess Vestla. The giants in the Norse cosmos are not like the fairy tale giants that we think of nowadays. They were in fact very similar in their skills and abilities to the gods themselves. But the main difference being that the god's purpose was to create order, and the giant's goal was always to create chaos. So Loki is really neither good or evil. He is just pure chaos. And his name means like knot or tangle. Loki is a self-serving, shape-shifting trickster. Loki became part of the Aesir gods and their pantheon because of his relationship with Odin. And Loki was not Odin's adoptive son and the brother of Thor, as I believe the Marvel Universe suggests. Loki was Odin's blood brother. You know, the dude Odin grew up with, the guy he got into scrapes with. And I think many of us know a person like Loki growing up. You know, that kid your parents never liked. The one you loved hanging out with because they were always pushing the boundaries just a little bit. And that's Loki. You know, on the classic 1950s sitcom Leave It to Beaver, this character was known as Eddie Haskell. He'd be smiling to Mrs. Cleaver all the while he was getting poor Wally and Beaver in trouble. Loki was really the original frenemy, as we said in our introduction. He was always ready to help the gods out with a cunning and clever plan, but his plans often went awry, causing endless predicaments and embarrassments for the gods. He could have had a sitcom. He would show up often uninvited or unannounced, crashing parties and demanding drinks. Yeah, he was that friend. Odin, who was obsessed about Ragnarok, which was the ending of the Norse universe, seemed to have little or no clue until it was too late that his zany pal Loki was going to be his final undoing. You know, the ones we hold closest can harm us the most. So let's get into Loki's love life. Loki was married 3 times in his life, and he has some really fascinating kids. His first wife was Glut, which means glow. She was the fire giant who left Midgard, the realm of fire, to settle in the Iron Woods, where she was adopted as a sister by Angrboda the giantess. Well, Angrboda and Loki like each other. You know, they like each other. But both of them are too proud to admit it. So, Angrboda actually gives Glut to Loki as his bride to prove to him how much she doesn't care. Here, I don't like you. Yeah, just marry my sister. But secretly, I do like you. I mean, what? Were they like in middle school or what? Come on. So Loki and Glut have twin daughters, Einmyra and Isa. All of Loki's children, these are the only ones who seem to get to be allowed to live any kind of normal god life. The sisters are goddesses who give energy, endurance, and strength to athletes and those involved in any physical endeavors. After a year of marriage and the birth of the twins, Glut left Loki so he could marry Angrboda because apparently their love just would not die and was destined to be. Well, you know, Angrboda means distress bringer, so what would you expect from that homewrecker? With the giantess, Loki had 3 children. Hel, his daughter, was the goddess of death. Jorgenmondr was the giant venomous serpent that guarded Midgard, and Fenrir, the great wolf. Now, there's speculation about whether or not the serpent and the wolf were born that way or were turned into these creatures at some point, but we just don't know. And each of these 3 children will have a critical role to play in Ragnarok, the ending of the Norse universe. You know, that thing Odin is so obsessed about. Loki's 3rd wife, Sigyn, was an Aesir god associated with compassion and loyalty, as you're going to see later on. They had a son named Nari or Narfi. Loki also had a son named Vali, who is not to be confused with Odin's son Vali. Some sources say he was a son of Loki only, but other sources say that Sigyn was mother to both Nari and Vali. And these 2 sons were not gods, and they had no special godlike abilities. So, have you been keeping count? That means Loki has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 children. The twins, the 3, and now 2 more. Right? But wait, because you won't believe the story of child number 8. Because this is the time that Loki becomes a mother. So to tell us this fabulous gender-bending tale, I'm going to turn it over to my favorite queen, Parfait.
Hey everyone, Parfait here with a crazy story that explains not only how Loki became a proud mama, but also illustrates how he was just that friend. This story shows the kind of everyday mayhem that Loki caused all the time. Except this time, he gets a little bit more than he bargains for. Well, a lot more. So when Asgard was in the early stages of development, they had yet to build a wall around the fortress and sanctuary, you know, for protection. And Loki naturally had a buddy, one of his giant buddies, who could easily build them a wall. The giant was happy to do this small service in exchange for, well, you know, the sun, the moon, and the goddess Freya as his bride. Odin and the gods, especially Freya, were like, oh hell no. But, you know, yeah, no worries, Odin. Don't sweat this, Freya, cause your boy Loki, we got you. That's the kind of attitude he had, and Loki's plan was to agree to the giant's fee, with a deadline. A deadline so impossible that no one could make it. And this way, they could get a large portion of the wall built for free and only have a small bit left to finish themselves. So they agreed, if the wall could be finished by winter's end. And the giant said, sure, I can do that. I just need me a trusty horsey. And of course, well, the gods agreed, because Loki assured them that there was no way the wall could be built by winter's end. Yeah, this all seemed like a fabulous plan until the giant showed up with his stallion, Svandafari. This horse was a beast, literally. It could work harder and faster than 2 men. Oh my, I'm impressed. Well, naturally, with Svendafari's help, the construction on the wall was proceeding very rapidly, and was beginning to look as though the giant might even finish early. Which, of course, well, made the gods, especially Freya, very, 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 very unhappy. They had no intention of parting with the sun, the moon, or the poor goddess Freya. Odin turned on Loki and was royally pissed. I mean, he was steaming. He was like, bro, you got us into this mess. You gotta get us out of it. And this guy finishes on time. It's going to be a huge problem for all of us, especially Freya. Anyway, and Loki, who was like always the trickster, told Odin, like, okay, dude, like, chill. I got this. No worries. Which probably just made Odin and Freya even more worried, which I totally would be. But Loki actually did have a plan for once. Being a Glamazon shapeshifter, he turned himself into a hot and very sexy drag horse. I mean, mare. So in the form of this beautiful and voluptuous lady horse, Loki prances on over to the construction site to check out this stallion for herself. She gave Svendafars, the stallion, one swish of her fluffy tail and a little wink, and then she trotted off into the forest. Well, what do you think that old rascal Svendafari did? Well, he followed Loki's pony fluffy ass right into the forest and was never seen again. And our dear friend Loki, well, in a form of that cutie pie mare, Loki delivered a bouncing baby. A beautiful little 8-legged colt, actually, and by way of apology, Loki presented this horse to Odin. The horse became Sleipnir, Odin's famous 8-legged battle steed. And that, my friends, is the story of how Loki became a mommy of a horse with 8 legs. Back to you, Meg.
That story really sums up Loki, always causing the drama, pulling out some crazy last-minute solution, MacGyver style, stirring the pot and creating sheer pandemonium. And as the master of mayhem, Loki is the catalyst for Ragnarok, the one thing Odin fears most. We talked about Ragnarok in our episode on the Norse universe, but today I want to look at it in relation to Loki and his children. First, Loki starts it all off by playing a trick. You know, he just can't resist it. It's like once he gets started with this Ragnarok thing, he just can't stop. Loki knows that the death of Balder, Odin's son, will start the cascading series of events that is Ragnarok. And you know, he just has to play that trick and he has to start it all off. And Loki learns that Odin's wife, who is Balder's mother, Frigg, has made everything on Earth, I mean everything and everyone, swear an oath to never hurt Balder, except for one small plant. And Loki manages to sniff this information out, that mistletoe had been overlooked as being too small and insignificant. And Loki fashions a dart or an arrow out of mistletoe. And what does he do? He tricks the poor blind guy, the god Hodor, into throwing it at Balder. Hodor has no idea that Balder is standing there because he's blind. And Loki's just like, yeah, throw it that way. And Hodor does. And Balder is killed. And that starts Ragnarok. Or does it? We might get one last chance here to save the entire universe from destruction. And Odin pleads with Loki's daughter Hel, who is the goddess of the underworld and the dead, to resurrect Balder. Because remember, Balder did not die in battle, so he didn't go to Valhalla or Folkvangr. And Hel agrees, but on the condition that everyone must cry for Balder. So everyone does cry for Balder. Everyone except the giantess Thok. And she cries her little crocodile tears, oh boo-hoo, and isn't really crying. So Balder cannot be resurrected. And who is this Thok? I'll give you one guess. You know it's none other than our old pal Loki, playing more of his dress-up drag tricks again. And so Ragnarok begins. And when the final battle plays out, Loki and his children have important roles to play. After the death of Balder, the gods are finally done with Loki. Odin turns Loki's son Vali into a vicious wolf who turns on his own brother Nari and kills him. Odin then uses the entrails of Nari to tie Loki to a rock under the earth. I know, that one is a lot, but wait, there's more. Odin then places a poisonous serpent above Loki's head that drips burning acidic poison down from its fangs. On to Loki. And Loki's devoted wife, Sigyn, stays by his side day and night. She holds a large bowl over Loki, catching the poison before it can harm him. But when the bowl gets full, she has to go and empty it, leaving Loki to face the dripping poison while she is gone. And now you see why she is associated with love and devotion. But when the final great battle of Ragnarok occurs, the earth splits open and Loki is freed from this prison. And he calls his 3 children from Agraboda to join him. His daughter Hel leads an army of dead from her underworld to fight in the battle alongside Loki. And Fenrir the Great Wolf battles with Odin and devours him. And Odin's death is avenged when Odin's son Vali turns around and kills Fenrir. Jorgenmondr, the giant serpent, is released from Midgard, and he and Thor engage in a brutal battle to the death. Thor deals Jorgenmondr a mortal blow, but only walks 9 steps away before being overcome by the serpent's poisonous bites. And Loki does battle with Heimdall. Heimdall is the watchman of Asgard and Bifrost the Rainbow Bridge. And Heimdall represents order and stability. His extraordinary senses make him the perfect watchman, as he can see, hear, and sense things before they happen. He is the exact opposite of Loki, who represents disorder and chaos. So it's very fitting that these two, who were lifelong antagonists, end up locked in battle at the end, and they battle it out at the final battle of Ragnarok until they are both dead. And if you want to know how that whole Ragnarok thing turns out, hey, go check out our episode on the Norse universe and you can find out. But as for Odin, the great love he had for his buddy, his pal, his blood brother, and his unwillingness to believe that Loki would be the instrument of his undoing is what caused the final end to arrive. Odin was obsessed with trying to stop Ragnarok from happening, but for all his wisdom, he was blinded by his love and friendship with Loki. So, choose your friends wisely, kids. Well, that's our look at Loki, master of mischief, creator of chaos, and all-around troublemaker.
He was always just slightly out of control, and let's just face it, he was a messy bitch.
Ooh, yeah, he really was that friend that you love and hate all at the same time. You know that person who's always embarrassing you and getting you into trouble, and you always forgive them because they're just like family.
Well, if you've had a frenemy like Loki, we want to know. So give us the sort of details of your stories, because we would love to hear more.
Oh, please spill the tea. Loki represents to me that same kind of energy that you see on reality TV shows, because for some reason, not only us, but I'm pretty sure these the ancient Norse people, all of us, we love to watch somebody stir the pot. It fascinates us.
Yeah, and I really do think Loki would have been really good on some of these competitive driven shows like Dragula or Drag Race, where he could have been that shape-shifting, not apparently afraid to be his feminine side horse. And let's just face it would have been a hot horse.
Oh, yeah. That stallion thought so. Talk about your pink pony club.
I know, right? Complicated and chaotic, Loki was definitely the original instigator.
And, I think he is a great figure for chaos magicians to study, as a cautionary tale perhaps, to really make us think about how, when, where, and why to sow the seeds of chaos.
Yeah, so true. And in the words of Buddha, 1,000 candles can be lit from a single candle.
And the life of the candle will not be shortened.
Happiness never decreases by being shared.
So thank you for sharing your time and energy with us here today at Meg's Magical Mansion.
Until next time, toodles!
Toodles.